0 to 100 is a podcast dedicated to bringing you quality conversations and insights on resiliency in physical, mental, social, and spiritual fitness through engaging discussions with those in the military and beyond.
0 to 100 and back. I'm your host, Mark, and I'm with my co-host, Steve. And we have a very special guest today, Ronald Mahrs, who I had the pleasure of getting to know when I was serving in NSW. And just to give a brief bio of our special guest, who will really help define what our podcast is about. This is really just the tip of the iceberg of all his accomplishments, but Ron was in the Navy for 27 years, and out of that, the majority of his time was as a Navy SEAL, and not just as a SEAL and multiple combat tour veteran, but also a tier 1 operator with Development Group. He is an experienced operator from multiple different wars, but also a very decorated one. Ron, I didn't even know. So when I first met Ron, I thought, okay, this guy probably is very seasoned and salty, just knowing by what jobs you've had. But here we go. Ron has been, he's received a Silver Star, 6 Bronze Stars, 2 Defense Meritorious Service Medals, 3 Joint Service Comms, 2 Joint Service Achievement Medals, and both Army and Navy Achievement Medals. He is also a recipient of 5 Combat Action Ribbons. So now I know that Ron's going to have a lot of stories for us based on that. But here's another interesting part of Ron's background, is that after all that, he had to now learn to be a student again and go to school for his MBA and other degrees and learn how to be a businessman and a normal person, I guess, if you will, a civilian. So with that introduction, I actually have a quote from a book, Ron. You might have actually met him, because I met him personally. He was in Coronado. They had him at the center. Sebastian Younger, right? Who's a journalist who's been to war many times as a journalist. He's an interesting dude because he's almost like a combat veteran. Even though he's a journalist, he's like shooting cameras.
That's right.
But I love this book, Tribe. And there's a quote from his tribe that I'm going to quote a few of them today. But I want to start off with this quote. And I just want to start off from this quote and just see, hey, what resonates with you, and we'll take it from there. This is from Location 60 in the Kindle book, right? The sheer predictability of life in an American suburb left me hoping, somewhat irresponsibly, for a hurricane or a tornado or something that would require us to all band together to survive. Something that would make us feel like a tribe. What I wanted wasn't destruction and mayhem, but the opposite, solidarity. I wanted the chance to prove my worth to my community and my peers, but I lived in a time and a place where nothing dangerous ever really happened. Surely this was new in the human experience, I thought. How do you become an adult in a society that doesn't ask for sacrifice? How do you become a man in a world that doesn't require courage? Off to you, Ron.
That's right. Yeah. So, the one thing I used to say, and I still say it to this day, it takes adversity and being extremely uncomfortable to create unity. And when you have shared experiences, good and bad, there's a lot of growth that's involved, and I've experienced that on a number of occasions, inside and outside the military. When having triumphs overseas in Afghanistan, Iraq, and carrying the victory flag home is a completely different feeling than putting your buddies on the helicopter. When bad things happen.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's there's a lot of strength that comes out of those experiences, and there's a lot of probably in the same thing that Younger's trying to piece together there. There are connections there that even after you leave and you're gone and you experience something like a hurricane or something like that, it's just catastrophic. It weaves people together, and it's one of those bonds that you can't explain it until you've been through it.
Yeah.
So you can't quantify it.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I start off with that quote because I'm hoping that the future episodes of this podcast addresses that, right? Because for some civilians, it's something they can't relate to. The 0 to 100 mindset. Like you said, you tell your wife you're like an on and off switch, right? There is no dimmer.
Yeah, in the military, you're the effects of cortisol, stress, chronic stress. It's basically, especially when if you're running off of an MH-60 overseas, and you have helicopters coming down. You get the 3-minute call, the 1-minute call. You're sitting in the door of the Hawk, coming down. Everything is always pretty near the same. You get in the brownout. Helicopter levels out, starts coming down. You're getting updates from the ISR birds. You got people running around off target. You have no idea who's armed and who's not armed. And the next thing you hear is gunfire, and all hell breaks loose, basically. So you go from that in that calm environment of the helicopter ride in, where you're going into harm's way. Something's very likely going to happen that is chaos, and it's catastrophic, and it meets all the definitions of what Sebastian Junger's trying to say, and then you ramp up. Your body goes through a series of changes where you can feel the muscles tightening up. You can I always remember I could feel my grip kind of tightening up on the weapon. I'm checking my selector switch, my safety, making sure my laser's on, making sure everything's ready to go. My nods are good. Radio's good. Got enough water, getting ready to go do business. Your eyes kind of tighten up. It's like the visual acuity thing. It's the same thing that animals do when they face a predator. Helicopter lands, and then that's it. It's like that's the switch. So everything else, you're off. You're sprinting to the target building. It's just you're going through all these motions of this years of combat training, and you're putting it all together to basically be at the very height of stress for about 60 minutes. Maybe sometimes less, sometimes more. And then you come down off of that.
Yeah.
You get back on the helicopter. You fly back to the base. You take your stuff off. When in my last position as an E9, all the guys go take their stuff off. Team leaders come in, meet with me. We do the post-op report. Type all the stuff up that we needed to type up. Situation reports and all these kind of things that would happen on the target. Get all the information disseminated, and then you go to breakfast.
Yeah.
The sun's coming up.
Yeah.
Night's over, and now I'm eating scrambled eggs and cantaloupe.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan. So that's the roller coaster.
Yeah.
And so that's you think about it, and you think about that over years.
Yeah.
That's just one night. And I had maybe 450 of those nights over the course of the 10 years.
It becomes a programming.
You're a switch.
Yeah.
You've totally programmed yourself to be a switch.
Yeah.
And so now you're back in the when I was going through the retirement process, and you're meeting with these these medical folks. I remember sitting with the one of the psychologists that was like talking to going through the VA process when you get out. The psychologist talking to me said, do you, basically the comment was, do you think you have PTSD or something like that? And I was kind of like, let me explain what an average night in Afghanistan was. And I explained, and I basically did what I just did.
Yeah.
Like, here's what we did.
Yeah.
Here's what we do. We look at TV screens. We're focused on a target that's intelligence driven. I brief the guys. We do the planning. We get the helicopters spun up. We get on the helicopters. We fly to a target building. We blow the doors off. People get shot. People get arrested. We come back. We go to breakfast. We eat scrambled eggs. We watch a movie, and we go to sleep.
Yeah.
You tell me. I did it for 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like you're the expert. You tell me.
Yeah.
How does that affect the
Yeah.
person? And of course, the lady was typing very fast
Yeah.
on the laptop. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the wave that you're roller coaster
Yeah.
that you're on. And you know, you get the understanding of people when they make decisions. You have to understand where they are in that cycle.
Yeah.
You know, because the
Yeah.
way that somebody responds at the peak of stress and the way that somebody responds at the peak of calm those are two totally different things.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of people that are well adapted to do that cycle for long periods of time.
Right.
So the question is, like you know, to your point of the 0 to 100 back to 0. So how do you replace that peak with something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So your brain is addicted to this.
Yes.
So I'm going to get out, and I'm not going to. I have to replace this feeling with something. So maybe I'll go to the ABC store.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll replace it with something from there.
Right.
To dumb down that feeling, or
Right.
to, you know, like, oh, I've got to medicate.
Yeah.
You know, whether your medication is prescribed by a doctor or it's
Sure.
you get it yourself. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the things that I've seen.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to find something else to replace it, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You know, and for everybody that's different.
Yeah. And it's common even among like you know, like junior Marines, right? Like we
Yep.
see in the Marine Corps where you got a sergeant who probably had 1 deployment or 2 deployments, and
Yep.
they come back. They have to get a bike or something, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
they need that speed. They
Exactly.
need that adrenaline because nothing else measures up.
No.
And domesticated life now, like changing diapers and those things, it feels like going 10 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Right. And you'd rather be at 0 or 100,
That's
and
it.
not at 10 or 15, crawling through the suburbs.
Yeah. So in when I retired in 2016, I started to recognize. So I was fortunate to be in the selection and training department at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and being in that department, you know, we worked with doctors, psychologists, human performance people. And so it's an education process. So
Yeah.
it enabled me to, you know, before that I'd been just an operator, you know, combat leader. I wanted to be out on the battlefield. I wanted to be deployed. I wanted to be in a strike force. I loved it. I mean, I just absolutely loved it. People would say, you know, my sister used to ask me, like, are you ever scared when you're over there? I said, no, I'm not scared. That's the safest place in the world. And she'd say, you know, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I was just saying, I'm on a helicopter with a dozen or 20 or 24 of the baddest mofos on the planet. There's no safer place to be. You know, like that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, there's a lot of strength in that. You feel you can't do that job if you somehow insanely believe that you know, none of those bullets are ever going to hit you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I honestly believed that. You know, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to be eating breakfast the next morning.
Yeah.
You know, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, because how can you, you know, do that if you don't believe that?
Right.
To which, of course, you know, she would say that I was crazy, but but then, you know, my mission goes on.
Yeah.
But it's just such a unique. Forgot where I was going with that point. Such a unique experience. You know, doing that kind of stuff for so long, and then having to get out of the military, and then you realize that you're the only person like you in the room.
Yeah.
And that is a shocker.
Yeah.
You know, so when I started my MBA at George Mason up in Arlington, I quickly realized that I was the only person with my background in the room.
Yeah.
And I used to call it gave me a prickly skin. I used to call it, like, you're uncomfortable and you get kind of prickly skin. Like, I don't really feel good here, you know, like I want to not be here. Yeah. You know, I want to go back with the guys, you know, I want to go do something like that. Like, is this right for me? I was second guessing it. And then, you know, you get your first, you know, your when you do the any of the, good accredited MBA programs, they start out, the classes are the same. So your first semester's, corporate finance, statistics,
Yeah.
organization behavior, like that kind of stuff. And statistics and corporate finance was an eye opener to me.
So I'm going to bring you back a little bit to that prickly feeling, right? Where that high, and Sebastian Junger's quote, right? And I got another quote later for it, but the sense of, he says that people, there's a decline in depression, suicide, and other mental health problems during war.
Mhm.
And he's looked at Europe, he's looked at tribal communities.
Yep.
And he shows that consistently, right?
Yep.
Whereas everything goes up. All the mental health problem goes up in times of peace, especially the wealthier a nation gets,
Yeah, that's
because
right.
the more individualistic they
Yep.
get, right?
Yep.
And so you have had that experience, and when you highlight, like, man, the sense of safety and the sense of mission you feel when you're surrounded with that team,
Mhm.
how do you replicate that? And at George Mason,
Yeah,
what,
well, that's
what was that like?
Exactly. So when you start a program like that, you do team assignments. So I did get some of that. So now you're just part of a different team. So I basically came to realize that you've got to, you're addicted to the team environment, to being around kind of people that are working collectively towards some common goal,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And you realize that you kind of have to find that wherever you go. So you got to put that team together. Luckily at George Mason, there was a lot of veterans. So there was
Okay.
prior Marines, prior
Okay.
Army guys, some active duty guys that were in there. So there was still some like-mindedness, which is obviously you got to be careful, because you don't want to, like with groupthink, sometimes you'll believe your own Kool-Aid.
Right.
But it was diverse enough that it allowed for some flexibility, some movement in there, and then you can hear, you can grow from other people's ideas, from totally different experiences that they have than what you have. But you end up kind of creating that team wherever you go. That's what I noticed.
So you were able to import.
Yeah, you were able to kind of get the folks that you kind of bonded with, or
okay.
you kind of,
Yeah.
you had some connection to them,
Yeah.
like some kind of like-mindedness, some type of whether it's aggressive or forward-leaning or mindset kind of thing. That's what I found was interesting, is that you can find people that have those similarities that were not necessarily attached to anything that you did in the past, or even remotely. So, and that was even more true when I went to New York University, because now I'm around people, none of them were in the military.
Yeah.
But I still found that in that cohort, there were a pod of people that kind of bonded and kind of like-minded, and kind of you feed off of one another, and kind of, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
So it happened at both locations.
So beyond like mission success, right, with your groups, where you guys can, I'm sure, do well at completing a task or a project, weren't you craving that cohesion you felt, that sense of brotherhood, right? Which is what the teams, like, that's kind of the secret sauce, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And because, and in many cases, Marines, same thing. That's
Yes.
why the idea of once a Marine, always a Marine. You don't say that about other services.
Yeah.
And so there's this
That's right.
deep, almost, jokingly cultic, right?
That's right.
Like
That's right.
bond that humans crave. And you guys get that
Yep.
and experience it. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so the best example I have for that is, so when I finished my first master's, finished the second one, it was a emotional roller coaster. It was hard on the family. It was super stressful. But the good part is that I never thought about the combat experiences. So I would have many conversations with guys who I had been on the team with for many, many years. And those conversations were typically, do you remember the night when this happened? Do you remember this target? This kind of stuff. When I was in school, and I'm like, and I had to kind of revert back and go, I don't really like, and there were a couple times I'm like, I don't know, I don't really remember that target. And then I'm kind of thinking like, oh, okay, I do remember. That was in 2004 or, whatever, something like that. But so the point for that is they're still there. The conversation's still there. I'm worried about my damn econ test I got on Saturday. like that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about economics. Like, that's what's in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, how the hell am I going to figure out this stats problem? I got to do a linear regression that's kicking my ass. And this thing, like, so okay, this is all new.
Yeah.
And my stress is through the roof for this.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife saw it. She see me like on the computer, hour after hour after hour. But it was the victory of getting the correct answer that fueled the academic passion that I had. I really enjoyed, like, I got it correct. Like, I did all this stuff on in a crazy Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and I got it right. I can do this. I'm like, this. I can't believe this. I can do this. I'm like good, and I'm good at it. So then I finished the program in New York, and I said, okay, I'm going to go and start applying for corporate positions in corporate finance. In New York, we were going to move to New York City. I was like, okay, I'm a New York guy now. I've been up here going to school for a year. We're going to live in Manhattan. We had actually we had taken the kids up there and gotten them into a private school right at Washington Square Park, where the campus is, right by there, block away from there. We were gonna rent a nice place in the city, and we're gonna live in Manhattan and stuff. You can imagine me, some of my background being like that type of a transition. It's just something that you just can't.
You can't take your armory. You can't take your armory to Greenwich Village.
You can't guess. You can't guess the future. People say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, that is, don't ask me that.
Yeah.
That is such a joke. You can't. If you asked me 5 years ago where I would be today, there's no way that I could come up with this.
Yeah.
No way. So just let it happen.
Yeah.
And just enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
That's where I am now.
Yeah.
So COVID happens. Manhattan loses, all sense of, rationale. It told the city looked completely different than it did when I was up there. I was walking from school to the hotel, stopping to the pizza place, and it was great. I loved the experience. So we shifted gears. I started looking for banks in Virginia to apply for. I was still focused on that, and then I started applying to just these places, and come to find out, one day my wife's like, "What do you think? What do you think? How'd the interview go?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how to say this." I was driving back home from a interview with a large financial institution, and I said, "I kind of wanted to throw that guy through the window." And she's like, "Excuse me?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know why. I don't. He was driving me nuts."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I don't know if I can work in that environment.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the right fit for me. It didn't have any of those things that where you step into that and you're like, you kind of gravitate towards certain people. I didn't sense any of that. I sensed that I was going to be totally like on my own, right? Like it's going to be like, okay, you got a great job, but you're kind of on your own, and you don't feel like who's got your back. That's the feeling, right? Who's got your back? And in the SEAL teams, somebody always had your back.
Right.
So you get so addicted to that feeling of I don't have to worry about what's behind me because I know someone's got it.
Somebody, right?
Yes, someone's got you. Someone's got it. 100%.
Yeah.
If I can go into that room, I can go into that room with bad guys in it. I know 100% that someone's going to follow me in.
Yeah.
100%. So that is a very, very powerful thing when you think about it.
Yeah.
So then it's this goes into when I met you in Florida. So then I was fortunate. I found this small team of guys from from Naval Special Warfare Development Group. These EOD guys. One of the EOD guys had started this company down at Virginia Beach. I was living in Williamsburg at the time, and I said, okay. I applied for this job on a base. It was like Fort Eustis. It was some obscure program management job, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I got to do something. I got to get to work, or I'm going to lose my mind. I'm out of school. I don't have a job. We got 2 young kids. So I applied for this job. Next thing I know, it was one of those obscure things where apply for a government contracting job on like Indeed, and then but you don't know the company that's actually got the contract. It's kind of, and I didn't know how any of that stuff worked.
Yeah.
So I get a call from this guy. His name's Leon, and he's like, "Hey, you just applied for a job that we have." And I'm like, Leon, like, yeah, I know who you are. He was a BOD guy at the command.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what is this? And he's like, what? He's got this, company he started. He's like, why don't you come and join the team with us and do this stuff and run Naval Special Warfare stuff for us. And I was like, okay, well, let me come down and meet you. And I drove down to Virginia Beach and met the guy. It was only a couple guys, and it's like, man, okay, this is kind of like this.
Yeah.
I feel like someone's got my back.
Yeah.
Like you kind of like. So we started. I started working with him. Went down to Florida, did an exercise for Naval Special Warfare down there in Tampa, and then we went down. We created a whole another. Basically from a business standpoint, this plays into people in the military that are looking to do different things outside. When you start to think in the concept of business and creating something that's unique, that's marketable, where you can have fun, you can earn an income, and you can have an impact on the community.
Yeah.
So that was my thing. I was like, okay, I joined Leon up in his company. The company's called Rigid Tactical, RIGID. So I've been with Rigid now for a year. And what I did was after I'd met you, I was like, this one day the war in Afghanistan, all stuff is gonna be gone. It's clear, like writing's on the wall. Every special operations folks are gonna get back in the water. I know that's gonna happen, 100%. It's a question of when and which companies are in that space ready to respond to that. Because now I'm a business guy. I'm military. I've been in business school. I'm wired for like creating opportunity, getting people, creating jobs for other people. That was my focus of like, how do I, with all these other guys that are coming out of the military, what are they going to do, right? I mean, I was hearing all these like, oh, I'm going to be a realtor, or and that's fine if you enjoy that stuff, but if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah,
and so you working guys with specific skills go and do niche jobs as a civilian, but they're still kind of doing what they did when they were active duty.
Yeah.
And they're still touching those communities. So it's keeping them grounded, and it goes back to it's keeping them have that sense of like, I got their back, right? I got you. We're bringing you in, and so we got into the maritime environment. Started offering basically training vessels for special operations. So now we work with Naval Special Warfare, we work with MARSOC, we work with USASOC, and we're doing a lot of interesting things for those people. So I tell folks that are active duty now, they ask me, what should I do when I get out? The first thing I always say is go to school. The first thing is like, it helped me. It was an off ramp for me. It provided me with a ton of stress, but it also made me aware that I had the capabilities to do anything that I wanted to do. It goes back. Everybody always says it. Like I tell my kids that you can do anything you want. But it's like, do you believe it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, when do you get to the point? When do you have the opportunity to test that theory?
Yeah.
Right. So here I was. I'm testing it on myself.
Yeah.
Can I really do it? I'm going to try this. And then people say, well, I've got my GI Bill I'm going to give it to my kids. And I say, okay, I understand that. It's a very noble thing to do, but you got 4 kids. Okay, right?
Yeah.
So that GI Bill is not going to go far.
Yeah.
And now you've got, what's the probability that the 4 kids are going to go to school? Right?
Yeah.
So if my dad had given me his GI Bill, which he had from when he was in the Army in the 60s, then it would have gone unused. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So I tell the guys, listen, and ladies alike, invest in yourself. The time to invest in yourself is when you need it the most. And it was such an excellent program. It provided income for my family with 2 young kids. It provided me an environment to off ramp from the military. It provided me stress so I didn't lose my mind. You know, I mean, I was not drinking because I couldn't. Because I had to stay up till 2 a.m. to, you know, get this case study or get this midterm out of the way or whatever. You know, I mean, I was living a clean life. I was drinking tea at night. I was eating. I mean, I was feeling great. So, and I wasn't thinking about other stuff.
Gave you a mission.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about. I wasn't worried about. Everybody's worried about. You know, oh, I retire. You know, I leave the unit. I wonder if the unit's going to call me up one day for that secret mission that goes down. Everybody believes that to a certain extent. Like even I believed it a little bit. Like, all right, I'm out now, and I wonder when the phone's going to ring because they're going to need me, right? Because I was so good at my job. That's the phone never rang. Right? So you realize that like you're in a certain period of your life. Whether you're an operator or whether you're in a support element or whatever it is your specialty is, that you just enjoy that time frame because that time frame one day is going to come and go, and you're going to be on the back end of it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because that train's going to keep going down the tracks. It's time for the next group of folks to get in and drive that thing. And that's perfectly fine. You got to find out what's my next train I'm getting on. And I'm going to focus on this, and I'm not going to worry about that one. And it's so it's a time occupier, but it's also a personal investment growth strategy that hey, there's a lot to learn out there. And when I sat down and with my professors, I couldn't believe how smart these professors were. I was just amazed at like how my stats professor was a physicist with Johns Hopkins or one of these places, and it was like I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was just like, man, I cannot. This guy is just unbelievable. So I was always amazed at how people could be so good at one specific thing, and I found myself thinking, man, I wish I could spend a year as like an aide to my finance professor. And so, like, I mean, literally, like, there's no way that Ron Mahrs from 2005 would ever say that.
So I'm going to stop you there for a second because of that, right? And I think that is a challenge for a lot of younger service members, and where they may look at either people who are in academia or scholars and be like, well, what? I mean, they're just talking about theories. I'm actually in the real world dealing with real problems. And so that's kind of a common, right, sort of stereotype about people in the ivory tower. Like they don't know what's really going on. And being in the military, theory and concepts only matter if they have real life kind of impact. And so you said yourself, the younger version of you would not have said that. What happened in your life that kind of opened you up for that?
So I think it's where you are when you stop, because you can't. I couldn't have reasoned if I were to go back in time and try to reason with me in 2005. I'm not getting through to that guy. I'm not getting through to him. Right? I'm going to be like, this guy is, man. You can't see the forest through the trees, man.
So there's no answer for him. Like, just gotta wait.
That's it. That's it. You don't know what you don't know. That's the perfect statement, right? You just don't know. And it's like, and I can't. It's like people that get into political discussions now. You just can't reason with the other side. It's like that kind of stuff. It's like it's for some reason both people just don't want to see anything except for their own two versions, and that's it. It's like that conversation.
Mine's already made up. It's not a discussion.
That's it. Your mind's made up.
I'm gonna. So we kind of have a good surface level picture, right, of some things you've done in the military and the transition that it took for you to get out and what you're doing now. I want to go back to even before you joined the Navy, and just so that our listeners get a sense of what is the DNA behind Ron Mahrs, right? Like what helped you become who you are today? Because, one of my CEOs used to always say, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I think about that as a way of looking at people's lives, right? Like we can't take your life and like one-to-one apply that, right?
Yeah.
But there are certain things that actually can be insightful and an applicable wisdom, right? So if you go back to pre-Navy, right? Let's say, I don't know, high school or time, like what was kind of animating your life and what pushed you into the Navy?
Oh, that's a good question. So when I was younger than that, when I was growing up, I was born in Lake Forest, Illinois. So I grew up, up until about age 10, north of Chicago. My grandmother, she was a nurse on the base at Great Lakes. So Great Lakes, naval station up in north of Chicago.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I saw as a kid. I remember going on base with her and seeing the Navy guys walking around in the wintertime with the pea coats and the white hats and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, it was up front and like, okay, that's it, right?
But your dad was in the Army.
He was in the Army,
Yeah.
yeah, and which is funny because I envisioned myself as, like, I remember being in high school, or even in middle school, and like wanting to go out in the woods and put on, like, I went to the Army Navy store, bought like woodland BDU
Yeah.
pants and jungle boots and this kind of stuff, and I was like, fashioned myself as the movie Rambo comes
Yeah.
out, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome.
Was
That's
commando.
yeah, exactly. That's what I want to do. So, it's just funny how things turn out. And then we went down to my dad took me when I went into the military. I was having, I did not lead an illustrious academic career in high school. I remember sitting in the graduation with my cap and gown, on in the high school graduation. It was in this Coliseum. I ended up graduating high school from Greensboro, North Carolina. Parents were divorced when I was young, standard, model American family, totally dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So you're hot from school to school. Ended up spending I gravitated towards team things, though. That was the one thing I always did, right? So I got into wrestling at an early age in Ohio, 5th grade, something like that. I remember my first weight class was like 80 or 85 pounds or something like that. So I got into like the below 7th grade was considered like extracurricular or whatever it was. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? It was like
It was an official team.
yeah, but we went and did like tournaments and stuff like that.
Okay,
I remember going
yeah.
to tournaments, and I loved it. I loved being around. I loved being in the team. I loved going to practice every night. I loved, PTing with everybody, and just the environment was just like, it's addicting. It's like, I wasn't going to school to go to school. I was going
Just
to
to
school
wrestle.
to go to practice.
Yeah.
That's all I cared about.
Yeah.
It was like, it's like, I just can't wait till I'm in practice. And so I did that for a number of years. Ended up down in Greensboro, North Carolina with my father. I was able to live with him for a year there, which was, that had its own challenges. Hanging out with the wrong crowd. Should have been going to school. Should not have been skipping school. That's a bad decision. If anyone's young people are going to listen to this and ever consider that, absolutely don't do that. That doesn't help the situation. So I'm sitting in the graduation. I'm like, I wonder if they're going to call my name, right? And I remember thinking, like, that is a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
You're right? Like I'm in the
Yeah.
high school graduation,
Yeah.
and I'm not exactly sure they're going to call my name.
Yeah.
Like I had some doubts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had signed up for the delayed entry program, in the spring of that year.
Okay.
Right. So I had gone to the recruiter. I don't really know why exactly I picked the Navy per se. We went.
What did you think you were going to do in the Navy? It was just a matter of getting away?
My dad was like, you got to do something. He said, you got to go. You either got to go in the military or you got to go to like a trade school, like a vocational school.
Okay.
And me growing up, I was like, man, I'm the vocational school kid? I'm like, man, I never wanted to be, right? It's like you're going to school. It's like, oh, That's the kids that are in metal shop or wood shop. Like you're
Yeah.
you're the Vokey, you know, you're like it's like, oh, man, like now I gotta be the air conditioning repair guy. Like which is I'm like, okay, fine. That's the path I created.
Yeah.
Based on decisions.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to go to vocational school. I'm going to go to the military.
Okay.
And so we went down to the recruiter's office.
So you were kind of forced.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, it was. I joke around. I tell people it was either boot camp or prison.
Yeah.
So not quite as serious as that, but I mean, it was a life-changing event.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad had to sign to get me in.
Yeah.
Right. So I personally think, I can't confirm this, but I think that the reason that they gave me that high school diploma was to get me out of Greensboro.
Yeah.
Because they knew I was in the delayed entry program.
Yeah.
And they wanted me in boot camp that summer.
Yeah.
So
the recruiter might have made a call.
They were like, get out of here.
Yeah.
That's why I think they gave me the diploma.
Yeah.
So I turned 18 in boot camp.
So even in boot camp, you weren't a motivated sailor or anything.
No.
Yeah.
No, I signed.
You were confused.
All my dad said was do something, learn something.
You're just kind of like dragging your feet.
Yeah, learn something useful.
Yeah.
Go in, learn something useful. So I got into the like advanced electronics field. So I qualified for like a year-long school. So I got so he says don't go in and don't do something that's not technical. Get a technical skill.
Okay.
So when you get out, you can have
Yeah.
technical skills and you can use them. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So I was like, they got this electronic stuff. I'm like, okay. So I go to electronics school, and then that did well in that.
So how was that like? So you kind of being pressured to go to the Navy by your dad. Your dream was to be Rambo, not go be an electro nerd in the Navie. And then, like, what was your motivation level? Like, how did you get by, and how did you do there?
It was kind of the same thing. So it was like, I ended up in this electronics cohort.
Mm-hmm.
So we were together the whole time.
So the team,
same thing. So you start in A school, you start in this class, and then you're with that as long as you don't like fail out or get rolled back or whatever they call it. You stay with that group the whole way through.
So as long as you had a team, you were good.
Yeah. So I was with the same group the whole way through. So it's like I'm in this team, and I got my classmates, and on the weekends we're drinking Natural Light and hanging out and partying and doing crazy stuff we probably certainly shouldn't. I would tell my son not to do, but bonded with that group, and then that group kind of took me through to the end of school.
Okay.
And then I started hearing about like SEALs, and there's like, oh, there's this guy there that was. He's always running with boots and carrying rucks and doing all this kind of stuff. Like
it was back then. It was like mystical.
Yeah,
what is that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
What does he work for?
What the hell's he doing? What's this guy? He's outside like doing push-ups all the time. Like, oh, he's going to be a SEAL. And I'm like, what are the SEALs? What is this? What is this stuff people are talking about? Like I've been totally off the radar.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, man. I kind of wish I was doing what he was doing. But I'm I don't know however we got in that program, and then I didn't think about it again for a couple of years, and then literally
you went to the fleet.
I was an electronics technician on a ship.
Yeah.
In the Navy.
So you probably hated life.
I hated it.
Of course, because you no longer have the team.
No.
And your shop could be, depending on the ship you're in, toxic or tolerable.
So imagine me again. If you'd have asked me back then, where do you think you'll be in 10 years? Yeah. No way you can come up with the answer. Absolutely not. Yeah. So I'm an electronics technician, working on. I was on a subtender, working on electrical equipment from the subtender. My tools of the trade were an oscilloscope, a spectrum analyzer. I reached back in the Wayback Machine here. I was an electronics technician.
Yeah.
So I'm standing this is how I found out about the program. I'm standing on the outside of the weather deck of the ship one day, looking down the pier. I'm an E4. I had done mess cranking. I was doing working parties once a week. I was loading boxes. I was polishing mess deck floors. Like, I mean, that's it. That's life, right?
Yeah,
that's my dream job.
Yeah.
So I experienced all that stuff. And washing pans in the scullery, I was kind of like, my lord. And I was out on the weather deck, and you see these guys walking down the pier, and they're wearing Woodland BDUs, They don't have hats on. Their hair is like longer. They're carrying these big black bags.
Yeah.
There's like eight of them or something,
Yeah.
and they're walking down the pier. And I'm like, there's a guy standing next to me. And it's like, who are those guys? And he says, oh, those are the SEALs from one of the bases. They're going out on one of the submarines. And I was like, what are they doing? He says, I don't know. They go out on the sub and they don't come back on it. So I have no idea what the hell they're doing. And I was like, man. And what I noticed immediately was that they were together.
Mm.
You could just tell.
The team.
You could just tell they were a team. You could tell.
Yeah.
They were. There was something about it that is like when you see a group of people walking down the street, whether it's how close they walk together, or it's like when you see a hockey team walking down the street, or like something like that. You can just tell that they're all together.
Mm-hmm.
On some, it's. I immediately identified with it, and I said, that's what I want to do. That's it. So I went down to admin on the ship, as an E4. I said, I wanted the instruction for go to buds. And of course, whoever laughs at me, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There you go. So they, it's back. There was nothing electronic. They print it off.
Yeah.
I get this paper package, and it's like, step 1, submit a request sheet to your whatever.
Yeah.
Respectfully request to go to buds.
Yeah.
That
denied.
That was it. That was my. I'm on a ship, right? And they're like,
we're not losing buddies.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this to get? I want to. So I went through the whole process on my own. Did the PT and did this and this and this, and then I got my, got orders to buds, and luckily I went TUY over to Naval Special Warfare Center to PT with them before buds. It just happened. It's like, so when people ask me today, people will ask me, hey, do you want to talk to people about going into special operations? Or I got a 19-year-old that's thinking about going into SEALs, or he's thinking about this, or he's thinking about that. Do you want? Can you talk to him and tell him about it, stuff like that? And I always say yes, I'll be happy to, but they got to do it on their own.
Mm.
If I'm any influence to push them into it, they don't want it.
Mm.
So it's the example of me making the decision on that ship, that moment by myself. I made it by myself. I did everything on my own, and I knew I was going to make it.
Huh.
I knew 100% that when I went out to buds, I just knew it.
Yeah.
I just knew it wasn't, and so now you fast forward to, being out in buds and laying in the Pacific
Before
Ocean.
you get there, though, I want to go back to the E4 Ron Mahrs on the ship, knowing about the teams, and before seeing those guys at the Black Packs. What kept you going, right? Because you had a troubled past, and you weren't really motivated about what you were doing, right, on the ship. So how were you surviving? What were your resources, right? Was there a team that you were relying on? Was it internal resources? Was it faith? What was it?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think it's probably just at that point when you're an E4, you're just like, man, I enlisted.
I'm stuck.
Yeah, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. This is my life.
Yeah.
I'm there's nothing, because you find it. I remember we had Navy divers on the ship, and I remember seeing them and noticing that they were
another team,
another tight-knit group of guys, right? And I remember seeing those guys and being like, oh, that's kind of cool, man. I kind of, I was always looking for that. And it was every time I saw it, I was like, you're jealous.
Okay.
And you want to be part of it, whatever it is. You want to try to do the next step.
Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't. I wasn't excited about jumping out of airplanes. I hate jumping out of airplanes.
Yeah.
People ask me, oh, do you go and jump for fun on the weekends? No, I don't jump for fun. And I believe there's two kinds of jumpers: people who stop jumping and people who die.
Yeah.
That's it. So. So one of the two.
Yeah.
So to take your pick.
Yeah.
I did it because it was my job. So, and they say, well, how do you end up with 600-700 jumps? Was it because I had to?
Yeah.
It's part of the job.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't like, I wasn't one of those guys that's like, oh great, we're going on a jump trip. So
because before like that E4 point, right? For many, that's the breaking point.
That's a breaking point,
right?
Yeah.
So they may not. Some people get in trouble at that time, right? Because they're just like restless and frustrated, or they get in trouble to get out. I mean, when I was deployed, I remember the ship deployment where I can't tell you how many were saying they're suicidal, they get pregnant, or whatever, right? Just because out of a desperate angst, I just want this to end. And so I'm curious, like, if you were talking to Ron Mahrs, the E4 today, before the teams and before that knowledge, what would you tell? What would you tell that E4 Marine, sailor, soldier? Like in that predicament, right? Low motivation. Just crappy job. Not a real strong team environment. What do you tell them?
So it's a great question. We up here just moved up to Arlington. It's a roundabout question. I'm going to get to that answer, but it's going to start with my wood floors in the house.
Okay.
We got the wood floors refinished in our house that we just bought because they needed to be refinished. The guy that owns the company that did them, his son's in the Marines. So I come to meet him because he's like, a nice guy, comes over to the house. He's a business guy. He's never been in the military. He said his father was a retired officer in the Marine Corps. Son went in the Marines, enlisted, and now he's trying to find his way. He's only been in, a year or two, and he wants to do this kind of stuff. And it's the same thing that I told him to tell his son. I said, tell him, the way he's telling me his son is me. That's what he's right. He's like, he's like a light switch. Goes back to that. He's either on or off. He needs that. He needs something. He gravitates towards certain types of people, and he needs some, some guidance and some teaming and this blah blah blah. And I'm like, it sounds like me. Tell him to go toward the special operations community. That if you tell him to go to that, he's going to love it. You're going to gravitate towards it. I was in E4. I was like, I'm getting out of the Navy. Screw this. This is the last thing I want to do. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do something. I have no idea, but I'm not going to do this. It's just not what I want to do. And for some people that's fine. But some people like it. But me, I looked at the senior folks that were walking around on the ship, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. When I'm, 10 years from now. I don't want to do that. So I would have gotten out. I would have gotten out of the Navy. And then Lord knows where I would be now. I mean, so the special operations community basically changed the direction of my entire life. It straightened me out. It grounded me. It gave me access to people who were 100% focused and committed. They believed in what they were doing. And that was the biggest thing for me is that, everyone has experiences where they've worked in places where you're 1 foot's in and 1 foot's out. Right. So you're only half in it, in these some jobs, everybody knows how it is. They see this like that person would rather be somewhere else, right? They're just doing this because they have to. You get into a community where that's not the case. Everyone is coming in for the same reason that you are. And that's extremely powerful. And then when you walk down the street, you get that sense of like, now people are asking you, what do you guys do? Right. And they ask you that because they can tell. They can tell that there's some type of strange bond, cohesive, agent that's in there that's got you guys tied together. And it's addicting. And even people on the outside looking in say it's addicting. And it just changes your whole mindset on it. And then, I was in E4 with 4 years in, I was getting out. And then fast forward 27 years, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So for the folks that are, and they know who they are, the people that, would be listening to this, they know like what resonates, and they know what they're attracted to, and they know the direction. Sometimes they just have to understand that they got to go after it.
Okay, then. So I think that does help speak to like somebody who's still new to the military or new to the Marine Corps, wrestling with it. Yeah, maybe special operations is an option, or maybe finding a different community within the military is another option for them, right? Whether it's diver, whether it's I don't know, a different MOS. What about somebody, right? Because generally, I think the perception might be people in special operations do the cool stuff, right? Whereas somebody in, I don't know, some kind of support command, back in garrison somewhere, stuck, like literally, just every day, just counting beans, could feel like, man, like, why am I doing this, right? Why am I even putting on a uniform? It's hard to feel like what you do matters. But some of them might be too senior, or might be just that ship has sailed, right? Like you, Ron, not just as a former SEAL, but just as now like an older, a dad, a husband, just somebody who's kind of lived life. What kind of advice would you give for that person?
So I just used to tell people that I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care if you make donuts, just make the best damn donuts. So I don't care what it is, just be the best at it. That's all I'm asking. And you're going to be part of the team. I used to tell, the guys, there was a guy named Tony that was, he was a bus driver on one deployment force in a strike force in Logar, Afghanistan. So he was a supply guy, right?
Yeah.
LS.
Yeah.
I loved him.
Yeah.
Like he was part of the team, and he maintained the supply stuff we had on our camp in the strike force. Made sure that we had stuff that we wanted, and and he drove the bus out to the helicopter.
Yeah.
And picked us up from the helicopter.
Yeah.
Every night, right?
Yeah.
So, like you can't do anything without that guy.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's just one example of we spool up the mission. We're doing the back briefs. I can hear the buses pulling up. Right. Ready every time. Right. That guy's there with the bus, Chalk 1 was on one bus, Chalk 2 is on the other, everything every night, right?
Yeah.
You get on that bus, you walk in, hey, Tony, what's up, buddy? Thanks, man. And then you see him 90 minutes later after, you've survived another one, and you're like, and he's there waiting for you. So the feeling that you get when you're putting together a team of people and you're coming in on a helicopter and you just been shot at, you just shot people, you just crazy stuff getting blown up, and you're coming in on the 47 to land, and you look, now you're over the base, and the bird comes over, and it kind of, spins around, you're looking out the ramp of the 47, and you see the buses sitting there. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. You know that everyone is there for the mission, right? So no matter where you are, whatever place in that wheel where you are, just be Tony. Mm. Just be the guy that's always. Yeah. He's all. I always could count on him. Yeah. Right. There was never a moment that I didn't think he was going to be there. Yeah. So it's weird. It's like you go outside and your parents there in the car waiting to pick you up. Right. So as a kid you're like, man, I hate being the last one here. Yeah. I'm like, everyone else gets picked up. That's not a good feeling. Mm. So it's kind of that same weird feeling of you're back home, right? You're back on the base, and there's because you're one big kind of family unit in the strike force. It's very similar.
That's good. That's a good, I think, good universal, right? Just a value of like whatever you do, whether you make donuts, drive the bus. Just take pride in it, and
that's it. That's it. And you got to be a glass half full person. Mm-hmm. You got to, you can't. Glass half empty is contagious. When you get people in a team that's a pessimist, it spreads like wildfire. Yeah. And it's like you gotta. I've been guilty of it too. You get somebody new in charge that you dislike, or that you have whatever the issue is. If you start down that rabbit hole of persistent pessimism, it's a disaster. There's never been a time that I've seen it turn out well.
Yeah.
Never. So it goes back to the sine wave we were talking about before. Is that you got to figure out as early on as you can, whether it's 17 or 27. So at some point, you have to figure out that your path is a sine wave. It's not a straight line. So it's everything is peaks and valleys. And there's times that I enjoyed being on the peaks, and I worked for great people, and I was with great teams, and there were other times that I was down in the bottom, but I knew that at some point I was going to come back up on the other side. So once you come to realize that, whether that takes maturity or age or whatever that is, when you can figure it out, it's imperative to recognize that very quickly. Of okay, yes, we're kind of in a low point here. I don't like going to work. I don't like where I am. I don't like my boss. Well, guess what? It's not forever. And it's hard to tell young people that it's not forever because they think it's forever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because to them, you got a 20-year-old, you're talking you're talking about a 2-year period of their life to a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Well,
10%.
that's a large percentage of his life.
Yeah.
Or his or her life.
Yeah.
2 years to me
Yeah.
is a much different thing.
Sure.
Is like, okay, it's 2 years, whatever. I can stand on my head and stack BBs for 2 years.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it's coming to that realization that that eventually you'll be on the backside of it, but you are a factor in that success rate or in the environment and in your overall happiness wherever you are on that line. That's you got to create it.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing that I disliked more was getting somebody that was just again, the folks that are just against everything.
Yeah.
They're against the system. They're against, and some of those people, I found that you can't, wasn't able to reach all of them.
Yeah. Going back to the theme of the 0 to 100 and back, right? I saw this a lot, and it's definitely prevalent in the teams, but I'm sure it's a military-wide thing. But people who are good at their job in combat, the same skill sets are usually hurtful in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it makes you lethal as a warfighter.
Yeah.
It makes you so incompetent as a husband or a wife or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I want you to speak on, how did you learn that, right? Because you were single for a while, right?
Yep.
You got married later, right?
Yep.
So you had a long years of conditioning.
Yes.
Of being good at as an operator, but now dating comes in or marriage comes in. What was that like? And like learning new skills.
It's the ultimate test of patience. But yeah, so our daughter was born when I was 40, right? So yeah, late bloomer for children. So yeah, basically married and started having children at 40. So many years of being, a single operator, didn't have any, I didn't have anything in my house.
Was that intentional? Did you want to wait?
No, it wasn't intentional.
Okay.
It's just kind of, basically, I think it's just especially when you're when you're deploying every year, it's just,
It's out of sight.
yeah,
right?
you just can't, it's like, it's not even possible.
Yeah.
And then I wanted, I didn't know whether I was ever going to have children. I had no, there were times there where I thought that I was like, wow, I'm probably never going to have kids. I mean, I was like in my late 30s, like, thinking that.
Yeah.
So, never going to, same thing, like, oh, I wonder if I'll ever get married later or what, what's in the cards. I have no idea. I'm just going to keep getting on the C-17 and being part of the team.
Yeah.
So get married. Then it's funny because you end up, everybody always thinks that like, oh, they got to find their like perfect match and these kind of things. And I just say, listen, marriages are like being in a SEAL assault troop when you've got. I used to say this about the troop commander senior enlisted relationship. I used to tell the guys that when I was a warrant running training, that's a marriage between those guys, right? So the 04 and the E9, you guys are married, all right? So not all marriages are fun.
Yeah.
Some of them suck.
Yeah.
Okay. 50% of them fail.
Yeah.
But you got to try to make it work.
Yeah.
you know. And if you can make it work, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So, but it takes effort. You know, I used to tell the officers coming through our selection training course, that's what I would tell them. And I said, you know, so just look at it from that aspect, you know, and from the E9 aspect, I used to say, I can talk smack about the true commander, you can't. So, because of that relationship, right? Because it's protected.
Yeah.
You know, and if you go about it in that sense, then that helps that union to grow and to be stronger, so that the guys can't break it apart, which they always want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same thing with being married and real. Is that, you know, I apply basically the same stuff, and I think it's because I'm older. I've had more patience now, and my, you know, luckily, you know, my wife's, you know, smart, and she's got the right sense of humor to put up with me. But it's very unique. I mean, I think it's tough to find.
But I'm even if your wife is extremely understanding, I'm sure there were points where you had to make adjustments, right? And like, okay, course correct.
I still do.
If I don't,
yes,
you know, I've been married 18 years, right? And it's a lifelong kind of journey.
That's right.
I think Steve's been married longer even. But I guess, what are some standout things where, like, it stood out to you that, wow, this works with the team guys, but this will not work with my wife, or this will not work with my son or daughter? Like, anything that you can kind of specify, like, like that,
well, it's
light bulbs.
It kind of, I mean, it's funny when you draw the comparisons, because there's a lot of similarities when you, you know, I always say, you know, when you're trying to be a leader of people are all the same, right? They're still people.
Okay.
So you still have the same kind of challenges, but you have to be, you know, so I use some of those same things, some of the same techniques, but not with the same intensity as, you know, active duty type of thing. But for me, it's mostly about wanting to. It's back to the donut, right? It's like, I want to make the best donuts.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be successful at
in your relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, and I would tell people, you know, when you're growing up in the community, there's a lot of challenges. You know, you're traveling. There's a lot of distractions. It's very hard on the wives. You know, the guys are traveling. You know, you're out with your buddies, you're partying, you're drinking, you're on the road. What I would tell people is that if you want to be single, be single. If you want to be married, be married.
Be all in.
That's it.
Just be all in.
One or the other. So that's the main reason why I was single for as long as I was, is because I didn't want to go into something and screw it up. So, you know, I was like, I'm just gonna, I don't want to disappoint anybody.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm living my life the way I want to live it. You know, and it's, you know, you gotta, you know, you're, as somebody in that environment, you've got a lot of power to help people. You got a lot of power to hurt people too. You know, so you've got to be careful with that. You know, if you don't want wife and kids, don't have wife and kids.
Okay.
You know, wait till later.
Yeah. There's something here though that emotional availability is a common issue, right?
Yep.
And I was jokingly saying to you before, I can't tell you how many team guy spouses have come to me and said, when he comes home, he's useless.
Yes.
It's like, it's almost better if he's deployed because he's a zombie.
They probably have more communication when he's deployed.
Yes.
They probably get addicted to like the phone calls, the emails,
the VTC,
because the communication is different.
Yes.
Because they're actually communicating.
Yes. Whereas at home, they're a zombie, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes they think alcohol is a problem, and alcohol doesn't help.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's more than alcohol, right? It's the turning off the switch. So
that's right.
With you, how did you learn to be emotionally available to your wife and your kids when you've had that conditioning for a long time.
I know. That's a good question. I have no idea. I have no
Do
idea.
they complain about that? Do they say,
No.
does your wife think you're not available? Because
Well, I got to be careful because she would probably. I did a behavioral, like a personality test once,
yeah,
and it was interesting. I was, because so you have to do these tests for when you apply for jobs in corporate America. All the big banks use them. You know, they do behavioral tests and Myers-Briggs or whatever portions of them. You know,
Sure.
NEO assessments and things. And I did one once with her, right? And I'm like, let's see where you think I am.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you'll read the question, you know, like strongly agree, strongly disagree, one of those things, right? And it's like a, you know, scenario, personality thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely not me. And she's like, oh, that's definitely you. That is 100% you.
Yeah.
She's like, you're crazy. That is you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And then she gives me an example. She's like, yes, remember the time when we did this and whatever? Like,
yeah.
And then I'm like, man, I guess so. Yeah. So it goes back to perception, right? So where do people perceive that they are?
Yeah.
And where you truly are when you start talking about like interpersonal relationships, communication. Most people, if I were to ask them, and I would imagine that you would get the same responses. When you ask somebody how they are, and then you ask the wife, those are two totally different things.
Yeah.
You know, because the perception with their viewpoint is different.
Yeah.
From where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So I know enough about, like, you know, basically the being in the leadership positions in the SEAL teams, you know, being a Master Chief and then being a selection and training officer. It enabled me to grow and experience and be around people where I could learn how to be a better communicator. Mm-hmm. So I started basically looking toward people who I saw had different skills than I did.
Okay. And
I took the opportunity to learn from them or watch them.
Yeah.
You know, so I'd find people that were like, oh, I like the way that guy communicates, or I don't like everything he does, but I like the way he particularly does this. And I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So I tell folks, find people that you trust and that you, you know, that you respect, whether it's peers or leaders, and pull in the traits that you think are effective and make those yours.
Yeah.
And you don't have to become somebody else, like, oh, I'm going to be just like that guy. No, but I like the way he does this. I like the way he stands up and he talks to people calmly. You know, I like it's like talking on the radio to the guys, right? Yeah. Like in a combat environment. If I talk on the radio and I sound stressed or like I don't know what's going on, that is going to screw everybody else up right? Like, but if I talk on the radio and I'm calm and I'm telling people where to go and I'm telling the assault team to go here, or I'm telling this, or I'm doing that, that sets the tone.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing at home. So if that's the you know, and that's not to say that that our house isn't pure chaos at sometimes, because there's a 7 and 8 year old in the house. So there's some chaotic moments, of course. However, it all goes back to, like, you know, like with my son and my daughters, if they're doing something we don't like and they get yelled at for something, it's pulling them back in and saying, listen, this is why I don't want you to do that. You know, this is why. And so I do that with the kids. I tell the kids, like, ever since they were, you know, very tiny, what's character? You know, and they go to Catholic school, so they say character is what you do. Character is the way you are because you know Jesus is watching. You know, and I say yes. Character is the character is what you're doing when no one is watching you.
Yeah.
No people are watching you.
Yeah.
That's character. And I want you to have good character. So if no one's watching you and you decide to do something naughty, that's not good character.
Yeah.
And I want you to just think about that. And so they listen to that now. And
that's a great segue, because one thing we were talking about is, you know, especially in these days, right, you got to have a lot of ethics violations in SOCOM, right? Yep. It's just a constant thing in the news. And even just nationally, right, there's a sense of distrust overall. And when it comes to, you know, SOCOM has a lot more freedoms than conventional forces, right? And because of the mission sets are different. And so you have people that are amazing. Like I met some of the most amazing people in the military in SOCOM. But you also meet people who can kind of flirt with the rules, right?
Mhm.
And,
Oh, yeah.
kind of do that. What's I mean, it seems like, are you Catholic as well, or what's helped you and grounded you,
Yeah.
and you know that ties into not just ethics and morals, but even dealing with trauma, right?
Yep.
Dealing with depression, all those things. Like, what's
Yep.
helped you at the deepest, more spiritual level, kind of navigate that?
So I was baptized when I was 41,
Oh,
41.
downrange.
No,
Okay.
in,
Oh, here, okay.
in Williamsburg.
Oh, okay.
So I did not grow up in any type
Yeah.
of religious environment or anything, and so yeah, it's like, how do you where do you put yourself on that grid? So the we were married in the Wren Chapel on William and Mary campus in Williamsburg, by the priest there, who's now lives in the UK. His name's John Kerr. He's a great man of much admiration for him. He asked, before we were going to get married, he had asked me, like, oh, what are your beliefs? I went and had like a meeting with him, because he was gonna marry my wife and I, and I said, I have no idea what's out there. What I can tell you is that I am alive today for reasons that I can't explain. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That I've had enough incidents in Afghanistan, Iraq, these places that, if I were a cat, I'd have like 2 lives left. So, yeah, I don't know what's out there, but there's something that turns bullets.
Yeah.
So, because I've seen it, and then I've seen it go bad for exactly the same reasons. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
The guy next to me, the next time, he's killed for the same exact thing. So how do you, how do you quantify that when you start thinking about, where do you put your faith? I think it's a natural, in wartime, it's a natural kind of push to start thinking about that, right? You're like, I'm going to, say your prayers before you go out, type of thing. And so anyway, I used to enjoy, we get the chaplains out to the strike force, and I'd always have some humorous banter with the chaplain would come out to the strike force and the unit and stuff, and they'd always be like, Ron, how come the guys they're avoiding me, they don't want to talk to me and stuff. I'm like, and I'd be like, because you give them the damn prickly skin, chaps. You give them the prickly skin. They're like, why is he here? Whoa, what's going on? What's going on? And he's like, well, I ask if anyone wants to come talk to me, and I'm in the the rec room, and I'm waiting, and nobody comes in, and like, man, like, and I'd always say, yeah, God bless you. God bless you. Like, kind of. And I said, tell you what, you come out tonight, give us a good prayer before we go out.
Yeah.
Give us a good prayer. Yeah. And they'd always come up with something like, guide the men tonight as they deliver evil upon those who wish us harm, or these kind of things, and the guys are just like, those kind of things, right? Yeah. So it's just, it's when you're in that environment, you're just kind of like, you don't want to come to terms with the fact that you're not immortal.
Yeah.
And it's
but you have to respect it.
It's that,
right? Because you see too much that you cannot control.
Yes.
So you have to respect it.
Yeah. It's like, if I stop believing I'm immortal, or that I'm just lucky, then bad shit's gonna happen. Pardon my French. I remember thinking, you get attached to. We're a very superstitious group.
Yes.
So extremely superstitious. So you do everything the same. And then you come back off the helicopter and you're like, man, I didn't get killed tonight because I had my magic pen with me.
Yeah.
You know, like, or I had my magic this, or I had this, because I always wear this patch and I never get shot.
Yeah.
So this is what it's from.
Yeah.
You know, and you start to like kind of believe it because you can't explain or see, or you know, you're trying to think.
You need something beyond, right? Just patterns.
Yeah.
Right. Beyond just the predictable. That
Mhm.
somehow is an X factor.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
professional athletes are very much the same way, right? Like, you know, they have their little totems and in their lockers, like a ritual before a game. But you know, you being such a team-oriented guy since you were a child, that's one of the ways in which a lot of team guys fall, right?
Yeah.
Because the section leader or the platoon chief or whoever may not be, you know, in the right place.
Yep.
And so now you being a team guy, you have to like, well, I want to be loyal to the team.
Yep.
I don't want to be the one that messes it up. So that's oftentimes, right, why people fall or go the wrong way. So there must be something for you that's an inner compass. And again, informed by this sense of like, okay, like your conversation with the priest, like, well, I haven't named it anything in the past, but yeah, there's something more than me. Like, I don't know what it is, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
So what has kind of centered you?
Well, so I've noticed. So there was a couple times in Afghanistan where I was basically like, you know, things, things happened. You know, one night a grenade went off right in front of me, and I didn't have a scratch on me. And you know, I've gone up against you know, barricaded shooters, and I'm still here. And you know, so there have been times that I've walked outside the, you know, walked out of the room or into the courtyard of the compound, and I've looked up and kind of look up in the air and kind of hold my fist up and give a little like, thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, and then you keep going on. So
Yeah.
you find yourself doing those things. And then you start to, I mean, you kind of start to think that like, okay, like I'm here for a reason, right?
Mhm.
Like, what's my path on earth?
Yeah.
Why is it that guy didn't make it and I did?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what that
Yeah.
is, but I think it guides you as you start to get older, that, you know, you can do good things and you can impact people's lives in a good way. And that was kind of the nexus of when I mentioned the, like, starting of a nonprofit foundation a year and a half ago. That's the basis of it, right? Like being I got this extensive background. You got these guys that are out there, you know, writing books and doing things for self, right? And I said, okay, what can I do to do something for the community, so that all my Army buddies stop asking me if they teach writing courses in SEAL training. You know, which is the jokes.
Yeah.
Hey, do they teach writing in buds?
Sure.
Like they teach you, you know, I'm like, great, thanks.
How to do a screen call?
Yes. So, you know, so I was like, okay, how can I use my background to influence, to do something so the good for people, for academic pursuit, but also good for the junior SEALs going in, that you can use your background and all your cool photos for something that's not just for you. So talking to my wife about it, I said, you know, I'm going to start a foundation for academics. Primarily goes back to the GI Bill stuff. So like for guys that want to do the noble thing and give their GI Bill, let's start something where we raise money and we give the money out to people for academic scholarships, that type of stuff. So it's called the Operator Foundation. Another plug there. So it's it's basically for JSOC folks. Mm-hmm. And then I included the Marine Raiders right now because of my brother-in-law.
So for the listeners, just say a little bit about your brother-in-law.
Yeah, so my brother-in-law's Tom Saunders. He was the Master Sergeant who was killed on the Mojo aircraft, the Hawk that crashed in Florida in March 2015 with his team. So it's my wife's brother, uncle to my kids. So he and I, kind of
Did
pretty.
you guys serve together at all? Was there overlap?
Yeah, so it was when I was a warrant officer when he was a team chief down at MARSOC. Got to know him pretty well. Had a lot of awesome conversations with him. Very similar childhood experiences, troublemakers. You know, in school suspensions, detention room, Saturday school, you name it. Yeah,
Yeah.
That was it. It's so we had a great connection with that. And then we talked about the Marines. We talked about MARSOC. Doing creating unique capabilities for the teams. And I told them, hey, I'd love to help do stuff for you guys, and so I included them with the foundation, and then also with the company that I'm working with now. We're doing a lot of stuff with the MARSOC battalions down in Stone Bay. It's great. It's awesome. It's amazing. When it's addicting because you go. I was just down in Stone Bay last week on the base, and when you go onto the base, you go into the team rooms. It's like you're back. It's like you're back.
Yeah.
It's like, man, do I have to be 50? Do I have to have reading glasses? Like, is this like really? Like, can I just be with the guys again?
Yeah.
So we'll go do training. We do training courses for them, and we do. We provide some unique maritime assets for them under the Rigid Tactical brand, and then it's addicting, and I love it. It's amazing, and so I get to do stuff for Tom. We've given out my foundation's given out scholarships to several Raider folks already.
So this is the scholarship is for actual active duty Raiders.
No, I give it to anybody. So if it's children,
there was families too.
Yeah, families, spouses, support people, operators. I just call it the Operator Foundation because it's catchy.
Yeah,
and because people like the name operator.
Sure,
right.
Sure.
So, but I'm never going to to support people. If Tony, the bus driver, asked me for a scholarship, he's getting a scholarship.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
There was a Raider out in California whose daughter was like 6 or 7 years old. Well, no, I think 2 kids. They had 2 kids, and they wanted to play soccer in California, but apparently the soccer league is like $2,000 to play soccer or something like this, and so they couldn't afford the kids to play soccer.
Yeah.
So he said, "Hey, would you pay for the, it's an academic foundation. Would you pay for soccer?" I said, "Well, of course we'll pay for soccer." Yeah, that's absolutely tied to academics. Like if you can, I think physical performance is 100% tied to emotional and academic performance. So your kids are going to play soccer.
Yeah.
So we did that. I've written probably 26, 28 checks so far to schools from MIT down to community colleges. So active duty folks, retired folks, daughters. Mostly a lot of daughters, surprisingly. So it tells me that there's a possibility that my sister's correct when she says that women are smarter than men. So it's a little bit concerning. So we need to get some more sons applying too, because we got the girls are crushing the scholarship stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff going on, of course. But that's when you get out of the military after 27 years, you have to have a lot of stuff going on, or you're going to lose your mind.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be stagnant,
Yeah.
and you can't be stagnant.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be busy. My wife yells at me all the time. Can you just put the computer down? Can you just put the phone down? Can we just watch TV for an hour? Can we watch this one show? And I'm always like, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm just not that person.
Yeah.
So she has accepted me for who I am.
Yeah.
That I'm the light switch.
Yeah.
So I shut down when I close my eyes and go to sleep. But otherwise, I'm always doing stuff.
Yeah.
And trying to take the, do the next thing.
Yeah.
When you get to the top of that sine wave after retirement, I want to stay on that crest as long as I can.
So a good friend of mine, Pete Kirchner, is the director of MPEAK, right? And I told you I'm going to go down to MARSOC to talk about that. mindfulness, performance enhancement, awareness, and knowledge. It's a mouthful, but it's operational mindfulness, right? He works with Olympic athletes. I brought him to NSW when I was there. We had a contract, and one thing he says that I like is he says, "Slow is the edge for the hypervigilant," right?
Yeah.
So he's talking about law enforcement, special operations, or people who are just in combat zones, right? And so when you say you're the light switch, I'm curious, what happens to you when you are dimming and when you are in cruise control at 60? Like, how do you react to that? Like sitting down, watching Netflix with the wife. That will constitute, right?
That's right.
Speed limit,
That
60 miles per hour.
That drives me nuts. Yeah, that drives me nuts. Like you said, she'll come downstairs and I've got like, Black Hawk Down on, or I've got like, Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Like she's like, you've seen that movie 100. Like, why are you watching that movie? Full Metal Jacket, like kind of stuff. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, this is how I get my sanity. This is how I this is how I relax. And she's just like, I think she just gets it because both of her brothers were Marines. So it's kind of, I'm a lot. I'd say I'm probably a lot like her brother Tom was in some of those regards. Like that's what makes me who I am.
Yeah.
But there are times that I'll sit down with the kids, which is funny because you gotta be able to do both. So I'll sit down with the kids and we'll watch like their cartoon movies.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've seen hundreds of cartoon movies in the last
all the Pixar movies,
5 or 6
right?
years. Yes, I know them all. So they say, you want to watch this movie. I say, okay, yeah, let's do that, because I know that moment in time, sitting down with the kids, sitting up, arms around both the little kids, watching that cartoon, not touching anything.
Yeah.
No devices, no nothing. Those are the times when you can't put a price on it, and you gotta invest in it.
Yeah.
So I recognize those moments too. So I do that stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to, and I've noticed that it's like being on the team when you're in the SEAL team environment. There's a lot of, we call them man hugs, right? Man hugs. It's like you see the guys, you see a guy you haven't seen in a while. It's a hard handshake. It's like, come on, get in here, bring it in. Give him a big bear hug. So there's a lot of physical connection. It's like a pack of dogs. You see them they're always like they got to be touching each other, exerting their like dominant stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, who's got the stronger bear hugger?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of power in physical connection.
Yeah.
So if you don't go out of your way, to get that physical connection, then you're going to be disconnected. I've noticed.
Yeah.
Even with my wife.
Yeah.
Right. So if my wife is sitting on one couch and I'm sitting on the other, it's like you both kind of make it a point to like sit next to one another or do some type of physical connection thing. It's very grounding, and it was always very grounding at the unit level too. Right?
Yeah.
You're sitting on the 47, you're sitting next to your buddy.
Yeah.
You're sitting right next to him.
Yeah.
You're in the door of the 60, he's right next to you.
Yeah.
He's touching you. Just like when you're going down the hallway and you're clearing a building, how do you know that the guy's behind you?
Yeah.
Because he's touching you.
Yeah.
He's touching you. You can feel him.
Right.
So there's a lot of like security in that, and especially when you're trained that touch means that the team's with you. It's a profound impact, and I think I've noticed it with the kids that it's like, it's grounding for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing it is with being married too.
Yeah.
So now I know my wife tells me all the time. She's like, come on, try to be a sweetheart for once. These kind of things. And I like laughing. And So, but you have to. You have to grab people and not grab them as like your like the same way I do our like a pet, like it's the same thing. It's a sensation thing. So anyway, I've found that really works a lot. I mean, having kids is just an amazing experience. Unbelievable. You know, guys always say that they should have, oh, you got 2 boys. Congrats. Oh, good job. Congratulations, or whatever. Like, or I got all boys, or, these kind of things. Having a daughter is, if you don't, you got to have a daughter. It's totally different than having my relationship with my son is different than with my daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, she would sit on my lap as a kid. And even now she does it sometimes. She's got her like hand behind my head and she's like twirling my hair or she's doing, I mean, it's just different.
The emotional connection.
It's just different,
makes, right?
It's just different.
Yeah. I got 3 sons and a daughter, so I know exactly what you mean. And Steve's got a daughter too.
Yeah. I mean, it's been such a, guys ask me, how's the family going? How's everything going? I'm like, oh, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. We just moved. We got a dog. I got 2 kids. It's a disaster. How do you think it is?
Yeah,
it's chaos.
Yeah,
but it's a chaos that I absolutely admire it, and I love it every second of the day.
Yeah,
like it's just to be able to be home, not gone, with the kids, and to enjoy the times and take them to Little League.
Yeah,
do this stuff. It's just priceless. So I tell guys, don't worry about having a daughter. It's good. It's fine. I'm sure it'll be stressful when she's a teenager, but I love it now.
Yeah.
She's 8.
Yeah. Yeah. As we wind down, I just got a couple of things. Steve, if you have anything too, please jump in. But I got one more last question, which is, I know you're, not in the Hollywood sense, but if you were to write a book, what would it be about? What would you believe in enough to actually put it down on paper?
I don't even know. I mean, I don't know if people would be more interested in like a life story type of thing, or more interested in how do you get people to run off of a helicopter when you're going into the complete unknown situation. How do you get people to do that, right? How do you get people to step off that bird with you when you're getting shot at from I've always been interested in that concept of how do you be that type of a person in a leadership position, and that was something that I'd always, certainly tried to do and did whenever I could was, I'm going to be the first one off that bird. I'm always going to be the first one off it. And you gotta do those things, because as you're a senior guy and you're in that leadership position, people are watching you and they're listening to what you're saying. I remember running into a guy who I had interviewed for our selection and training course. I didn't remember the individual, but he remembered me. And the power in the position and the power that you have to influence people at certain times. And he mentioned that, I remember when you interviewed me and you said this, just whatever you do, do it the best that you absolutely can every time, whatever it is. Because we didn't pick him up for the training course. Yeah. He said, I remember you saying that to me, and so I think about when I do stuff now, and I just remember thinking that is pretty profound, because I have no recollection of who he is, but he remembers exactly what I told him in that moment. So it's basically, how do you make people understand that that's the position that they're in, and they gotta do good with it while they can, because so many people lose that opportunity. They don't appreciate where they are and the power that they have to influence people. Yeah. And you might influence somebody, and you might hear about it years later. So I think the win is when you have people that contact you, years down the road when they no longer work for you, and they ask for advice. They don't work for you, but they still ask you. That's 100% a win. So when I get those kind of things, that's when I'm like, that's a great feeling. So Good, yeah. Book. Maybe it'll be maybe a children's book.
I love it.
Or I can write a book about how to be a Navy SEAL, how to be a Navy SEAL that can you transition from guns to Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
That's kind of
trade the rifle for a laptop.
That's right. That's 100% it. 100%. Yep. I'm not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. So
yeah, that's great.
It's a great ride, and folks have to appreciate what they have when they have it.
Yeah.
And take advantage of their youth, and push the envelope. I mean, you gotta try.
Yeah.
At least you may not make it. That's fine, but you gotta try.
I think your story encapsulates what I would love to highlight for any listener or any Marine, sailor, or soldier, whoever, dealing with the transition of, war fighting or day job, and then family life or personal life, right? And one thing I found extremely admirable among some of the team guys that I've worked with is, I would say, hey, take the drive you have in being an operator, apply it to completely a new skill set you're not good at, which is marriage.
Yep.
And you're going to thrive.
Yep.
And I actually had the opportunity to see some of them do that.
Yep.
It was extremely rewarding. And so the tenacity, the drive, if you just apply it there, it may take a little bit, but and I think you're kind of a case study of how you did that in business and other aspects of life. So great, just a great story, great example.
Yeah,
Steve, you got anything?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's a realization of nobody's perfect.
No.
Certainly not me. But you gotta learn from mistakes, and you gotta try to, pass on the lessons from those mistakes to other people, to keep other people from doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's realizing that hey, I'm by no means perfect person here. So that's the power of teams, power of relationships.
Yeah, and I feel like your story should be called Teams. It's about the team. Whether it's the Little League wrestling, Pee Wee wrestling
my
team.
kids are my team now.
Yeah, they're your new team,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful construct for life. And I think it's a fitting way to end our podcast with me reading a quote about what Sebastian Junger says about kind of the tribe, right? He says, "It's about what we can learn from tribal societies, about loyalty and belonging, and the eternal human quest for meaning. It's about why, for many people, war feels better than peace, and hardship can turn out to be a great blessing, and disasters are sometimes remembered more fondly than weddings or tropical vacations. Humans don't mind hardship. In fact, they thrive on it. What they mind is not feeling necessary. Modern society has perfected the art of making people not feel necessary. It's time for that to end." Ron, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah.
Thank you.
This concludes another episode of the 0 to 100 podcast. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, be strong, be courageous.